Do you like the Metaverse? Because I like the Metaverse, and I'm really excited that Virtua's Cardano Island is sponsoring this episode. Cardano Island is one of those projects I'm excited to have in our ecosystem. There are small, medium, and large plots, also condos, plans for 4 main sections, different zones and districts, fan caves to display NFTs, 6 different land resources, land bots, non-player character slots, slots for our Cardano Summit 2021 NFTs, other games, and lots more features. I bought a large plot on Cardano Island, and I can't wait to be on my land to see what this becomes. Check out cardano.virtua.com or click the link below. Systemic risk. The rallying cry of every regulator who has ever existed anywhere in the world. This is the episode where I team up with a central bank to tell you that crypto is dangerous and it must be stopped. Also, you should own nothing and get all your protein from bugs. Wait, no, none of that is true. But I do agree with a recent central bank view that a newly emerging component of our crypto landscape is a systemic risk to the traditional systems. Where we differ is that they seem terrified of the entire Jenga tower collapsing. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here thinking, if this whole thing is already so fragile and impermanent, maybe it's time we sit back, have a few of those drinks, and start moving pieces around. Ready? Let's go. Today, we are going to discuss a new post by Bank of England researchers on what they think might be a huge new systemic risk in crypto. Coinbase losing over $1 billion. More robbery forced action, this time with Curve, and someone actually doing something we joked about just yesterday. If you've always been slightly uncomfortable with the way everybody acts all surprised and shocked at the end of every game of Jenga, even though that's how every single game of Jenga ever has ended, or if you're finding value in these videos each weekday, please consider delegating to the army of Spies stake pool, ticker AOS. Man, sometimes these central banks are so subtle. Here's a website called Bank Underground. Wow, Bank Underground. This sounds like the Fight Club of banking. It sounds like there's some Tyler Durden-esque character out there orchestrating a group of renegades, a group of outlaws who are going to buck against the current financial system. It's the Bank Underground. And look at this. It doesn't even have articles on it. It's a blog. Sounds so much less intimidating than article or academic article or, something like that. It's just a blog. Don't worry. They're not even articles. They're just blogs. But then we go down here to the bottom of the article and we look at that piece of the article where they usually have some information about the authors. And here we see Owen Locke works in the bank's resilience division. The bank, right? Like the Bank Underground, this Tyler Durden rebel bank. And Teresa Cascino, who works in the bank's fintech hub. If you want to get in touch, please email us at bankunderground@, Bank of England. This is a blog. Bank Underground is a blog for Bank of England staff to share views that challenge or support prevailing policy orthodoxies. So it's only underground. There is no Tyler Durden. These are not outlaws. They're not renegades. They work for the Bank of England. And it's only underground because they might be sharing views that challenge or support the prevailing orthodoxy at the Bank of England. But in this case, they're expressing something that I think I probably agree with. This article is called Crypto Assets, the Metaverse, and Systemic Risk. Despite this being the seedy and seditious underground of the Bank of England, the article kind of starts off like a central bank article. They first tell us a bunch of things about crypto assets. They dare not call them cryptocurrencies, of course. I'm shocked they didn't call them digital assets or digital ledger technology assets or one of the many euphemisms they normally like to use. I guess crypto assets is as good as we could hope for. Then they tell us about the metaverse, and they start out like a lot of these types of articles do. There is no definition of the metaverse, and then they just kind of, start mentioning VR, AR. They talk about the sandbox and the possibility of avatars working at, for instance, the Gucci store in the sandbox, and that these metaverse projects could even sell you branded digital avatars, which they're going to call skins. They love to. I love how they love to adopt like the gaming terminology for anything in the metaverse, because they want to appeal to younger audiences. They don't want to seem too academic, so they have to mention skins, but they still need to put it in quotes so that we understand that that's not their terminology, just that they know what it is. Then we get to the role of crypto assets. Likewise, they tell us a bunch of stuff we already know, that DeFi exists, that NFTs exist, that there are actual use cases for NFTs like event tickets and the aforementioned skins. They love to throw that back in there. Don't worry, you can buy skins with your NFTs. Then we get to the part that actually matters in this article. So in this section, they start talking about financial stability, and they hit on some of the topics you'd expect, like volatility. Many crypto asset prices are highly volatile. Shocker. I think anybody in the crypto space would agree with that right now. There's a lot of volatility in crypto assets. There always has been. And a lot of the assets are intended to be non-stable assets. The vast majority of them are non-stable assets. So you're going to experience some volatility, but then they talk about some new risks posed by crypto assets that are a little bit different than traditional assets, because certainly they point out traditional assets also can be volatile. They say there are these new things: oracles, smart contracts, custodians, and they're all vulnerable to hacks. This is correct. They know about the robbery forest, and this is true. This is a big risk with crypto ecosystems. You've got arbitrary logic kind of living on the chain, and it can be exploited. Then they say confidence could also be undermined by issues with the blockchain settlement layer, for example, Ethereum, including miners extracting rents by front-running transactions. Front-running, certainly a thing. High transaction fees, also a huge thing. I mean, I think it is kind of a risk when we have these big, blockchain mintings happening, for instance, and a giant amount of the assets are lost to miners and probably one day to stake pool validators in the form of failed transaction fees. And they say validator concentration, also a big risk with blockchains, especially the one they mentioned, Ethereum, and that these things can enable malicious behavior in how new blocks are added to the blockchain. Definitely, that's one way to describe miner extractable value. In a lot of cases, I think the people who aren't on the beneficiary end of miner extractable value would call it malicious in a lot of cases. All of that so far has pretty much been a review for anybody already in crypto. But here's the part where they get to the things they actually want to talk about. And these seem to be the things they're most terrified of. They're also exactly the things I've been talking about on this channel and I'm most excited about. They say if a sizable open metaverse materialized, households may hold a greater share of their wealth in crypto assets to make metaverse-based payments or for investment purposes, and corporates may increasingly take payments for goods and services in crypto assets and sell digital assets even, for example, clothing NFTs in the metaverse. Indirectly, if people are increasingly employed in jobs in metaverse-based settings, their employment outcomes may be affected by risks from crypto assets, like a loss of confidence in the crypto asset ecosystem, resulting in reduced metaverse-based activity and subsequent job losses. Non-bank financial institutions may even increase their holdings of crypto assets if a growing open metaverse improves the investment prospects of crypto assets and improves their supporting infrastructure. Down below here, they said, that said, were these exposures to materialize, a crypto asset risk crystallizing could result in, among other things, fire sales of traditional assets. This is kind of hilarious because they talk about these things as if they're all horrible, terrifying outcomes. But I think most people in crypto, if they heard this list of terrible things, they would say, Actually, I think I'm in favor of all of those. What we're basically talking about, especially with this last part, fire sales of traditional assets, is a migration of wealth out of the traditional systems, the traditional asset markets, and into these crypto markets. And the weird thing is that they're really focused on this idea of corporations coming into the metaverse and taking payment for goods and services in crypto assets. Likewise, people increasingly becoming employed in jobs in metaverse based settings. And, they do point out, like, of course, if you're working in a metaverse, then a loss of confidence in the crypto ecosystem that metaverse is a part of could have an impact on your job. That's certainly true. But I think you kind of take that risk when you're going to work for any particular corporation or group. If that company starts seeing their fortunes dwindle, it might be bad for your job. This is kind of a normal thing. But the rest of it is just sort of like this general fear. Hey, we don't want traditional assets to be affected by all this crypto stuff. If this metaverse setting turns out to be the perfect setting for crypto, and all of a sudden companies that previously didn't really want anything to do with crypto are jumping into the metaverse because it's this new way for them to directly access customers, and crypto is like the perfect way for them to transact business in that metaverse setting. That's the piece they seem terrified about. And I think they've got a good point, because corporations, let's face it, so far, they haven't been exactly killing themselves to like become integral members of crypto ecosystems. Like we don't have all the giant corporations knocking down our door in Cardano. And it's kind of the same thing in all the other crypto ecosystems. They might dip their toe in, sell a few NFTs, do a few things here and there. And some companies certainly have jumped in, but largely it hasn't been like the advent of the internet so far, or the dot-com boom, where all of a sudden every corporation realized they needed a website. But the metaverse could be that way. All of a sudden, it could be like the dot-com boom. They could all realize they need a presence in the metaverse. And if crypto is the way business is conducted in the metaverse, that means that all of a sudden, all these corporations will be doing business in crypto. I think the Bank of England is pointing out one possibility. And down below here, they even say that this is just a possibility, not a certainty. The above scenario is a possibility rather than a certainty. I agree with that. I don't think anything's certain, especially not in crypto. But this is the possible spark that kicks off something that looks a little bit like the dot-com boom. Not in the sense that everybody was rushing to register silly domain names in the hopes that they become valuable one day, but in the sense that real corporations doing real business suddenly might realize they need to be in crypto because they feel like they need to be in the metaverse. If they feel like I do, like the dot-com boom was a 2D thing, this might be the 3D thing that they also need to be a part of. These Bank of England researchers are calling this a systemic risk brought on by the combination of crypto and the metaverse. I think most of us in crypto would say, yeah, crypto was always meant to be a systemic risk to the traditional systems. Speaking of unwanted outcomes, today was also the day that Coinbase was forced to tell us they lost over $1 billion in Q2. I remember a time when it would have been unthinkable for any company, any entity in crypto to make or lose any amount of dollars that had anything to do with the number a billion, 1 billion, any number of billions would have been unthinkable. But the next time you think crypto winter has been unkind to you, just remember that last year in Q2, Coinbase showed net income of 1.59 billion, and this year in Q2, they showed a net loss of 1.1 billion. So even if you bought an NFT for 50 ADA and it's now only worth 5 ADA, just remember, you're probably not as sad about that as Brian Armstrong is about going from positive 1.59 billion to negative 1.1 billion. Of course, a big piece of this is that Coinbase holds crypto for itself as well. And at the end of March, sort of at the beginning of Q2, they had $1 billion worth of crypto. But by the end of June, those crypto holdings were only worth 428 million. So no need to beat yourself up. It turns out that not even Coinbase knows how to sell at the top. More robbery forest action today. Curve was exploited. Here we see a report that it looked like 570,000 stolen. So certainly not the biggest exploit we've seen in DeFi over in the robbery forest, but Curve is not a small protocol. This is a really big platform. For them to suffer any kind of a compromise like this that results in people being told not to use the front end, this is a pretty big deal. This shows that no matter how big a platform might be, there's always going to be some new exploit, some way for people to steal money. Here's how you know that a lot of DeFi, as it currently stands, is not at all ready for or even meant for the mainstream. So after Curve acknowledged that there was a problem, they came out with a bunch of tweets addressing what users should do. And they started with things like this: the issue has been found and reverted. If you have approved any contracts on Curve in the past few hours, please revoke immediately. The contract that needs to be revoked is this unintelligible string of numbers and letters. If you have approved it, please revoke it immediately. I think we could all agree, having read this, it's time to turn all of our grandmothers loose on DeFi, allow them to commit their retirement assets and resources, and then just sit on Twitter all day long, every day, just in case there's an exploit and they need to immediately revoke contracts. You'll remember yesterday that there was the joking suggestion going around that someone take a bunch of Ether from TornadoCash and send it to all of the VC accounts. It turns out somebody actually did this, not necessarily to VC accounts, but they did take 0.1 Ether and send it to a bunch of prominent .eth accounts, including a bunch of Ethereum maximalists whose Twitter activities we've talked about before on this channel, and even some more prominent people like Jimmy Fallon, who's been pretty noticeable in the NFT space. But I'm sure that the U.S. federal government doesn't appreciate this very much because people aren't supposed to be interacting with TornadoCash at all. But pretty funny joke nonetheless. I hope you're having a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.